Hey, this is Naomi.
Ari.
Treasure.
And me.
We are Caribbean cousins.
Having open,
candid conversations
about our upbringing.
And much more.
Continue listening to
Spill the Tea with us.
Hold on, y'all. Now, before we start this episode, I know we're about to get juicy. I gotta make a shout out to one of my followers. Now, I don't know if y'all remember, if y'all was paying attention, but on our Instagram, Tea Time with the Cousins, we did a poll where people can vote to see which host was from what city. So one person guessed the right answer for where I was from. And guess what, y'all? It's not Brooklyn, New York. It's Detroit, Michigan. And because she guessed the right answer, she gives this shout out. So this episode is dedicated to you, MC Mills. And just for y'all, she just so happens to be a poet and a rapper. So go ahead and check out her music on Apple Music, Spotify, SoundCloud, Tidal, because she's a dope artist and she's a dope creative. So, love you, girl. And without further ado, let's resume the episode.
Welcome, Cordell, to the podcast, Tea Time with the Cousins, your first entrance in. And the whole point of this podcast is kind of like to get to know Cordell. You're currently living in
Maryland.
Yeah, and so I used to live there with you. I feel like you became my sibling when I lived there with you. You're
Yes.
like my brother. And so I kind of got to know you, but a ton of people don't know who you are. So other than your name, Cordell, and I know you graduated from
GW Law School.
Yeah, I don't know that much about you in that sense. So do you want to give like a little, like, hey, I'm Cordell and I'm from, where you born? Like, who are your parents?
Well, I was born in Boston, Massachusetts on January 2nd, 1996.
Dang.
So old because I can't remember that it was in the midst of a blizzard or snowstorm. To Carolee Mason and Anton Domer. Those are my parents.
Sure.
So born, parents separated when I was like 2 going on 3, can't remember. That's where I've grown up most of my life. And then lived in the Caribbean a little on a small island called Anguilla. Moved back to the United States, lived in Huntsville, Alabama. That's where I claim, where, anybody asks you where I'm from.
For sure.
So I grew up there from 8th grade all the way through high school, like boarding school in between here and there. College, university, had to hold it down. Took a year off after graduating in pre-law political science. By the father's blessing, got into school at a pretty good school, graduated, and now I work as a litigation fellow at the Church State Council in Southern California. And so I'm supposed to be moving out there. So all the Lord's blessings. So supposed to be moving out there, but they've been gracious to allow me to work remotely.
Wow.
Interim, but I have to be there at the end of the month for a conference, and then I'm supposed to be moving next semester. But we'll see. I just take day by day.
I feel fortunate because we're all adults now. We all have jobs. So I feel fortunate you've carved out this time for me. I'm in Hawaii right now. It's 8 a.m. So I'm trying to chat with you before I get back into my thing too. But yeah, I feel fortunate that we have this time to talk because it's not promised. You're gonna be busy in the next month or two, and I may not be able to reach you. So I appreciate that. But I've always wondered about your dad. Like, where is your dad from? Like, I've heard your grandma's accent, your grandpa's accent. Like, where are they from?
So
French, Creole?
My dad's parents, grandpa is from Jamaica, grandma's from, so there's British West Indies and then just French. So I don't know, it's not the French West Indies, but there's the French culture that is there. My dad was born in Brooklyn because my grandparents York when they moved here. My grandmother came here when she was 16 years old, lived with her aunt in New York. And see, New York was their meshing and building point. Had my father, my uncles, and yeah, that's
your grandma is a legend.
Oh, baby, I legend, baby. But when I understand my grandma, the reason why she has so much pride is because my grandma's executed at such a high level for someone who's been in her circumstance. So think about, coming from a family where she's been isolated, and then she America. She only speaks French, doesn't speak English. And then she overcome all the obstacles of not just being, not speaking the country, but there's, some dynamic that are also going on when she came here. It might have been within the 50s, or it would have been in, the 50s, late, so 50s, early 60s is when she came to the US. And going through this thing, and she's fighting to get education. So starting at AUC, going to Hunter College, getting her associates, then her bachelor's, then her and my grandpa, they were like met each other. My grandpa was only on $35 a week when he met her, but my grandma is the person who's like, listen, if you're gonna show up, we're gonna be married and we're gonna stick it all the way out. And so I'm telling you, it's all about the commitment.
Oh, I love it.
So they mesh, and my grandpa is like, okay, he builds with my grandma. So my grandma wants to strive for excellence in education.
You're making me think, though. I know you're on a roll, but you're making me think about people that want to wait to get married till everything is perfect. Like, we want to be better than our parents. I get it, right? Yeah. Like, we want to have things established, but isn't it moving when you start from we're both just even if you just start off, we're both college graduates, and build on there and build, and everything we have is because it's like sweat and sleepless nights and sacrifices, and of course fun in between, but we are making moves to build. I just feel like that's beautiful. Like, no one can take that away from you.
No, that's real. And I think other cultures have mastered that mindset. So our thing is now get married, do your career, get a house, get all the things you need to do, then get married. And the issue with this is that it's not biologically productive, but at the same time, you come everybody at the table with, I have this, I have that. Okay.
Don't take this away from me either. Like, this is mine, this is mine.
Exactly. And so understanding what's a separate state and a corporate state in terms of when you come to marriage, everything that you bring to the marriage before is yours. So even if you get divorced, everything is yours. However, depending on the state, everything you have within the marriage is together. So I think when you start and you're building and everything is together, it's hard to think about divorce, because of, in essence, from when you had nothing, right? Someone with you and saw the potential within you. Yes, we have to be practical, not let emotions get behind bad decisions. But if you find somebody who is working, that means they have their execution level, say, hey, I value education. You value education. We're striving within education. I'm not going to be the barrier between what you have, not going to be the barrier what you have. Then we can build something. So I see that my grandparents, my grandma was more on the, hey, I'm moving up the corporate, educational ladder. My grandpa, even though that was not his proclivity at the beginning, he says, I am willing. And that's all my grandma needed is, hey, are you willing to make advancements? And my grandpa said, I'm willing to grow. And so when she, he goes to the Army, he gets his certifications, he gets his associates, his bachelor's degree. My grandma has her associates, she's working on bachelor. They both at the same time go to the Medical College of Georgia to work on their master's. Okay, my grandma's doing her thing. She's building clinics. She's doing all these different things. And then my grandma says, hey, I'm going to just go out of the ballpark. I'm going for my PhD at Vanderbilt. Notice my grandma came 16 years old, can't speak English, and she's breaking down all these barriers where they're like excuses of why you can't do this. And then where she got, I think, her BSN before she went for her master's, she got it at UAH. Huntsville, Alabama. You're thinking about the 60s and 70s in the South, deep South. And so you see break down these barriers. Then getting into Vanderbilt, which is a top school to get, so my grandpa, what she does is convince him to sign a piece of paper, but she enrolled him into classes. And my grandpa is such a cool guy that he said, hey, you signed me up. And then he executes at a high level. He teaches and he's doing his thing, but there's two people who are willing to just say, hey, I see where I come from. I'm willing to do better, and I'm willing to grow with somebody. Is everything perfect? No. But the way in which my grandma and grandpa have meshed and worked and loved and respected each other is, I think, that sets the foundations for where I am. Because
I just feel like life goes by so quickly, and to be busy at work, that's not just for yourself, but for the building of your family. I feel like marriage goes by quickly.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm already married 3 years, and I'm just like, wow, okay.
3 years?
Yo, see?
That is mind-blowing.
Mind blown. I was just in the house the other day. I just feel like I was right there just the other day. And so if time is going to go anyway, build, work, do it together. The idleness is not helpful. And so then you're going to how could you not grow? And
Yeah.
ministry as well, all into there, not just about yourself, about your community. How could you not grow?
Yeah.
And so I'm like, okay, at one point, weren't you like undecided about what you wanted to do? At one point, weren't you like fearful? Like, where'd you get your strength from? Like, how did you keep going?
It's not a perfect story, at least for me.
Yeah.
I think part of my livelihood, so growing up with my mother's single mother at that point, just my mom's resilience. So you're just going through the process when you're a little kid. So you just get thrown wherever you go, moving to Huntsville, having to go there, you're just flowing with the process. And I think where anxiety starts to build is where security from under you starts to move. You move into college and it's like, okay, security nets are there in theory, but in real practice, it's like, hey, you're showing up and you got to do things. So started at Venice University of Health Sciences. Then I ended up coming back to Oakwood because, I was doing well starting out before pre-nursing. And then, I prayed about it and Father through several circumstances landed me back at Oakwood. So at their grandparents, like I said, they established I was able to stay in one house like that they've had and managed. And, I was able to just do that, have my friends in, and was just able to manage. But then still it was a struggle because, though I'm not paying rent, I have to deal like with just life, just on its own. So you're trying to do very well in school. And then, minimum wage in the South isn't like crazy, but it's like, how do you do school? And you're waking up at 5 a.m. to go to work. Then after that, you're doing all these different things and you're trying to figure out life. And so in my mind, it was just to show up, do what I can. I am tired. I just burnt all the way to the end. It's only, I think, by the goodness of the Lord that things end up working out, because there will be times where I don't have the funds because either I had to pay for school and I have to pay with school with my credit card. It's like, but I was like, let me develop some credit. But it's like, okay, I have to pay for school sometimes, right? Because something might not be covered. You have to, end semester. And I was like, okay, well, if you want to clear and start the next semester, you have to pay. I was like, oh, well, let me use this card. Then it's like, okay, well, I got in a car accident. I have like a car that I need to take care of. Now I have to pay out to pay for my new car, right? I have to pay that every single month. So you see, like, life just started hitting.
You start drowning in a way. You feel like you're drowning. Yeah.
In your mind, you're like, I never want to be in this situation ever again. And so by the time you graduate, you're like thinking, oh, I have a college degree. It's going to be easy to get to work. So I didn't get law school my first time. I had to take a year off, but thankfully got to work on Capitol Hill interning for a congressman. However, through that experience, I'm not making money at the same time. Still driving down, how are you going to get to DC? How are you going to get back? That's gas, parking if you get a ticket. And so all different things can increase your level of anxiety because it's like, and you do not have the necessary flow of cash to sustain some of the incidentals that life might bring. And so going through law school, I think has allowed me, because, you're able to have loans, stayed at home. I was able to work during the summers and I was like, oh, this is a more comfortable life. However, when you go through trauma or like anxiety that builds, you have to realize, okay, it shifts your way of thinking, because you think, man, I have to be extra secure. And I think the motivation is great, but it's to the point where it's like, you never want to be in that place ever again. Right? You struggle and how difficult it can be when you do not have resources in order to take care of yourself. That is just.
Yeah, I mean, I was so happy to see you here, because I was like, okay, I know that our parents, thankfully, they're like, hey, if you need a place to stay, you can come here. Obviously, if you're working towards your goal, please stay here, we'll help you. And so I was grateful that at Tiana, if I wasn't living there, I probably wouldn't have met my spouse. So I was in a position where I was able to work on myself. I was able to work at a job where I had the money where I could travel back and forth and see him with ease, and then have to struggle about finding a place to stay. It was just a lot of things where I know I could have stayed somewhere else, but I needed people. I needed community. I didn't need to be by myself. And so I had them. And then seeing you get that too, I was like, good, he's getting that too. And I felt really good to see you have that.
Value of any community. Well, your parents might not be cashing you out in terms of, hey, they grow bills, but if they give you a place to stay, that I think that is
food, the abundance of food.
And that's a blessing, and I realize there's a blessing at staying at home, right? So they might not be putting money into your car all the time. They might not have the money to put into your finances, but if they say, listen, we have enough money to pay the lights, we're able to pay our mortgage, and we're able to put food on the table. And because you're a part of our family, you are willing to stay here, right? As long as you're moving toward the bag.
Oh, for sure.
You know, and I think just that level of like security, and I think Caribbean culture is also really, well, it depends. It depends.
We're not all lucky. Yeah.
Not all lucky to have those circumstances. So I don't want to put a blanket, but I have seen generally within Caribbean households, the family community, they're willing to support that because, you know, coming from, you know, Guyana, your family coming from Jamaica, it's willing to say, oh, wow, in order to put my kids forward, at least giving them a roof over their head is important. So I don't take that for granted. Beyond all, I think the difficulties of my life, I'm still thankful because at the end of the day, you know, where would I have been if, you know, my parents said they hated me, right? If my parents never answered any of my calls, my parents weren't kind to here and there put money in my bank account or just say little things like that. So I think I'm very privileged and blessed. Has everything been perfect? Can I minimize the trauma and anxiety that I've been through? No. However, at the same time, as becoming an adult, I have to look back and say, man, it's not perfect, but I'm thankful. That's why I value my experience with my dad now, because, you know, longest I've ever lived with him, you know, I grew up with my mom, grew up with experience, but being able to sit down with my father and say, okay, hey, Dad, these are all the trials that I've had. This is how I feel. My dad is the coolest, calmest person in the world. He listens so well. And so I can express my deepest emotions. My dad's not gonna like bat an eye at me. And like, he understands that I'm hurt, right? And so over the time, I've also seen my dad open up about his hurts, his pains, he's been through. And so now as an adult, I said, man, my dad's a great guy. And I don't have a narrative about him, right? I got to know him. Is he perfect? No, but at least he shows up, he works, you know, he gives great motivation, and he's striving for something. How many other Black men, right, could you say are doing those same things? Cares enough about his family to show up, puts worship at the head of his thing, and is at least doing something that's going to move someone forward. And so I just say, it might not be all the little ideal boxes that I might check off of what I think a man should have, right? But I think at the end of the day, he's striving to be the best man he could be based on his circumstance, based on what he's doing. And I said, listen, I've had to take my things, humble myself, and just say, hey, thank you for showing the spaces in which you can do.
I don't know when it happened for me, but like I started to humanize my parents. Maybe when I started thinking about me being a parent too, because I was just angry for years too. Like I come from a broken family, and then a blended family with the step parents and the step, you know, brothers and sisters. Thankfully, they didn't like have new kids, which is okay. But I didn't think I could have handled that extra layer. But the point is, like seeing them and having these uncomfortable conversations with them, like this hurt, and them not defending themselves, them apologizing. I was like, oh man. And my mom being like, I am so sorry. And then she'll just call me in a couple years later, I am so sorry. And I'm like, Mom, I love you so much, but I free you from that. Like, I don't hold a grudge from you. And even my dad has done that for me. My dad has called me one day and said, like, I'm sorry you felt like you had to live two different lives, like tell me something, then tell your mom something, and like split yourself. You're not responsible for that. We're sorry we did that. And I'm like bawling because I didn't realize that was a burden for me. Like I'm still doing that and married, I'm still doing that. And he's like, I free you from that. Bruh. So
I think what you've put into the cycle, I think is so important for healthy relationships that are within broken families is when a child comes to a parent that they are in pain, do not minimize their pain. Why? Because their childlike perspective, they didn't ask to be in this world. And so if you're going to make decisions that are going to impact their lives, maybe you made it for good decisions. Maybe they were thinking through. You need to say, hey, listen, I do apologize. And my mom has had to sit down and say, I apologize for all the decisions. I look back and said, Mom, I understand why you've had to do some things. Dad, listen, if I was in your circumstance, I might have done the same thing. Yeah. Yes, it still impacts me, but just sorry, just that I wish I could have done. And I think the difference is like, at least you're showing up now, right? You know, and
thank goodness.
It's spiteful to just write my parents off. I'm not going to talk to them. But I said, listen, God says, honor my mother and my father, that my days may be, long upon the land, which the Lord thy God. And I said, man, I might not have had 20 years with my dad, right? However, if the Lord spares life for another 20 something years, I can do something about that relationship. So just taking some ownership as an adult and saying, listen, I can initiate conversation. I'm the one hurt. Let me go out and have a conversation with him. If he's willing to have a conversation, at least I've gotten what I feel on the table. Let me start to build a relationship. Even though the relationship is not what I expected, I'm still a responsible person. I'm in control of me, right? I'm in control of how I'm going to deal with my hurt and my pain. And then I have to, like you said, take it off my parents, forgive them, and then say, if there's something deeply rooted, I need to go to a therapist. And it's okay with doing that. At least,
sure. I think when I was a child, my expectation probably was like, my dad needs to come to me because, when I was a child. And then when I became an adult, I was like, how is my dad doing? How's his day? And so I would reach out to him and just think about him and just say like, hey, what's up? But that was easy for me because he's done the work of reaching out for me. His hand was reaching out to me. That way I'm like, okay, I need to reach out to him. He's human. He's had a bad day. He has stuff going on with his life that I know nothing about. Let me create that relationship and put an effort in. I haven't spoken to him in a week or two. That's not good. So I'm about to call him after and check in on him because I want that relationship. I want that connection. And even before being married, I definitely wanted me and my dad had conversations such as like, he's like, if you don't have this hard conversation with me, imagine being married and like trying to avoid these conversations. So you have to have the uncomfortable conversations. So let's talk this through. You can be pissed at me. That's fine. You can cuss me out. That's fine. But we need to talk this through. And we had those kind of conversations.
And I think,
I
think on the same point, for those who are listening, this isn't a cookie cutter situation. Where it's going to change for everybody. Some people, the parents will say, listen, I don't want to talk to you. I really don't care. I don't want to do anything. Painful. And, that's a very painful circumstance that going to therapy might be the best way to go through, right? Because I think also when trauma, you pull those into relationships and you expect, if your mother was in your life, there's trauma from your mother, that your wife is going to step in and she's going to be that mother for you. No, she's your wife. She's not your mother, right? Thing, you might come into a relationship where trauma from your father, right, gets now put onto your husband. He's your husband. He's not your father. And so find the nuances within a relationship where, hey, I am responding. And this has become self-awareness. My triggers, my responses, my insecurities. I'm putting that on the next person that I'm with. How do I now address that where I can be a complete person within my relationship? So I think definitely before getting married, I'm not married, but definitely as I'm thinking about marriage, preparing myself, I have to deal with those situations because beyond that, I think about legacy and I think about children. And I said, okay, it is important that I have a relationship with my father because I want my son, if the father wills, or daughter, to have a relationship with me. I want to see that I have a relationship with my parents because now their community will be stronger because I was willing to break the chains of hurts and pains that they can have a relationship. And when we're thinking about just human development, the more that a child feels that it is a part of community, the better it will feel secure in executing in what it needs to do. When a child is insecure, traumas, insecurities, and all these things set in, and the kid will start to bear that. But in a safe, nurturing environment where there's love being poured into it, it's going to develop into the best thing it can be. It's just like any seed. And so I realized tackling trauma, dealing with issues benefits the next generation because they're able to come into a more comfortable environment.
I wanted to add too that I don't give advice about how my relationship with my father was able to build over the last 10, 15 years, like, because I know that my experience is unique. I know that people have other suffering and hurt that I don't know about. I definitely don't want to play counselor and say, this is what I did and it worked for me and you should do it too. Like, please don't do that, So I'm glad you shared that disclaimer there. And I know people have a lot of hurt and some people are not able to talk to their parents and people's parents have passed away. And it's so sad they're not able to have that closure. And so the responsibility is to next take care of yourself, seek counseling. And I see it even in my relationship. Sometimes I'm going through something and my partner does not know what to do. Is looking at me like, I'm here for you, but I don't know what you're talking about. Like, I can't sit with you with this. So I'm like, okay, I got to take care of myself. I'm going to do counseling for me. I'm not going to tell you we need to do counseling. I'm going to do counseling for me. I'm going to get my stuff together. I'm going to bring with you the growth I'm going through in counseling. But I'm not going to stay here and dump all my stuff on you because you are in your own little world trying to get your stuff done. And you just can't. I don't want you to fix me. No, it's not for you to fix. That's for God to fix within me. So I'm not going to lay it all on you like that. Like, I don't know.
I think you said strong dynamic is, thinking about a support system and accountability system and someone trying to fix you. One, I might be able to spot things, support, but it is for you to take the initiative that, hey, I have an issue. And I think, hey, at a point in time where someone tells you, hey, this is something that you've been doing, you should address that. I can hold you accountable when you're doing, I can help you schedule, I can support, but I have the technical skills to come into the nitty gritty and break it down. I'm able to fix the garage or to put up a counter, but dealing with emotional trauma, I think there's some science behind that. And I think that spiritual counseling is one aspect that I just, seeking God daily. We're having him work the work of sanctification, understanding that outside of my parents, he says, where your mother and father forsake you, there he is. And I think that's one aspect of a longer internal self-mastery perspective of saying, okay, let me now go deeper, that I know that if I don't have anybody else, at least I know that there's God who's working through me and in me, but he's also going to put you in situations that he's going to challenge, that test you and mold you and put you through the refining fire and be able to look at circumstances as they are. I think my life in general has been like, God, why? And sometimes doubting, like, why does this have to be so painful? But when I look back and, when you look at your story and you see someone else, there's so much divorce, so much pain, our generation, like, it's like we were dipped in the furnace, right? And so it's like everybody's set ablaze. And you can see someone else who has a burning fire and say, hey, listen, my fire is just as hot as yours. Let's talk about it. Let's mesh it out. What are you going through? Let's identify.
That's what I don't get enough of. And I want more of that. I have a hard time with a lot of little silly conversations. So I love talking about hair and all the fun stuff and clothing. Like I can do that. But like we're becoming adults now. We're trying to build our home. We're trying to like invest in things. We're not just trying to like throw our time and energy away. And so I love these kind of conversations. If we have an issue, if I did something to you, let's kind of talk about this. Don't let us like steam and sit in it and talk about each other and avoid each other and hate each other. Like that's not a good sense of energy with me. So I want to have these conversations. I want to come to one another and say, I have an issue. Like, how did you get through this, Cordell? Like, how did you get through this depression? How did you get through this anxiety? And let's talk about it. And so I'm totally with you on that. More of that.
Yeah, and I think the hard part for anyone is that we have perceived expectations of what we believe someone might believe about us if we tell them our story. And what I've tried to do is get out of this, I have to be this big person and I gotta be all that. I have no, I'm a human being, right? Lord, let's go through a process, but that doesn't separate me because I've been able to have a different path than yours that I'm in. We both have pain. We both have trauma. I think that's why church has to be a place where at the end of the day, we can't move from the taboo. We got to address the taboo, live in the taboo, address, addiction, address depression, all. And then you have more people who will show up and say, hey, and this is what the church is. Hey, I have an issue that I don't want to be in. Can we address the issue instead of giving motivation on, hey, go through my week, but you don't know all the underlying dirt because there's an image that we believe that we must have amongst ourselves as believers, amongst his family, instead of, listen, hey, I accept you not because of your stamps and the initials behind your name, but I accept you because I see you as a daughter or a son of Christ. And in doing so, you have value despite any of those different things. And I think when you really understand your personal value, that you see people in just a humanistic perspective, because he says, while we were yet sinners, Christ died for us. That is nothing else.
We're free.
Exactly.
Free. It sounds too simple for people, but we are free.
I call it the paradox of the gospel, right?
It's so annoying.
So complex, also so simple, that he has set you free. But then when you walk in that freedom, you're walking in the spirit. But this is deep. This is
I love it. I love it.
I realize when you start to walk in that identity of what he's called you to be as a son and daughter of the Most High, you start to see people through that same identity, through that same value. And so their experiences, no matter how dark, no matter how many mistakes they made, you say, man, if he won me back, I know he did the same for you. Because I know how bad my experience has been.
For sure. So is this what you're really passionate about? I was gonna ask you, like, what are you really passionate about?
My passion, right? I was telling somebody this morning, my passion lies in two things: religious liberty and sharing the gospel. I don't care about anything else generally, as long as I'm healthy and the Lord gives me life. I don't care about cars, fancy homes, big clothes. For me, that is just all a waste of my energy. The only thing that I feel like passionate about is that I can pick up my Bible, read some books, and then share with people experiences, because I do believe that Christ is coming soon. And I want as many people to know that he loves you. He's coming back for you. But he's also given us, some signs that are going to indicate how close he is, because he loves us, and so that is my passion. That's the thing that I go into bed and I'm developing arguments of, first, how, if I am met with somebody who asks about the Sabbath day, am I able to have and share this testimony? How can I share my own experience that someone who's going through, depression, addiction, pain is able to say, listen, hey, I can identify that. And because of her testimony, I realize that Christ is real. Right?
So if we had a cousin reunion and we all kind of got together and we were all talking, and I would ask the group, what is something I can help you right now or support you in right now? It could be an issue, a conflict, or just how can I support you right now in the next year or this new year? Like, what would you share in the group? I can share mine too, but.
Me, the biggest support that I need is, on a real note, is confidence in walking into examinations or into difficult situations. Because I think sometimes, like, for example, you start a new job, you have exams to take, you're doing all these different things, you're intimidated, right? And sometimes while going through the fire, you want somebody to hold your hand, right? Just the process. And I realized, I was sitting last night, I said, man, I wish I had somebody who's not necessarily going to hold my hand, but at least be there in the fire with me, right? Alone, because, that's where I am. Sometimes I feel like I've isolated myself from the world over the last, couple of years. Like
I feel you.
And, it's like, wow, this thing is painful. You don't need to like carry me, but if you're walking next to me, can we talk? And so having a strong support system, I think, is what I need, and realize that, hey, I need community. That's the thing that I'm searching for and dying for, of people who have a like mind, who are encouraging, who are uplifting, and who are willing to serve the Lord.
Mine's very similar to that. And maybe that'd be similar to people listening too. So from 2020 to right now, we've been moving a lot. And so I've been in isolation a lot. 2020 isolation, moved in with my mom. I was like, I can't live by myself anymore. I'm about to lose my mind. And so I'm with her. I still have depression, like heavy. I move here, depression's still there. Husband goes to deployment for 6 months. It's still heavy. And so yesterday I met a really sweet couple, multicultural couple, Hawaiian, Black, Tongan, they're all in there. We're all hanging out. And she was like, yeah, it's normal to have depression during deployment. I'm like, it's normal? I'm not crazy? She's like, yeah, it's normal. I can barely get out of bed, but I got out of bed for my daughter. And so my prayer has been wanting to find a chosen family. But it's scary because it takes a lot of energy to meet those kind of people that really care. I'm not talking about like superficial stuff, like people that check in on you, people that will bring food, people that will say, hey, I have some food, everyone come over and have dinner. Like just the littlest things matter to you when you've lived by yourself for a long time. Like solo, like sharing a meal, having a conversation, like, oh, this is what happened to me today, ha ha ha, and looking over and having that conversation. But when you're by yourself, you look over, there's no one there, you're eating the same meals every day, you make a big pot of food and you're literally eating it by yourself. But then there are people outside that are hungry. It just messes with you. Like, why am I by myself when where there's a community of lonely people? Like something ain't right. And so my needs and my prayer has been close family community. And I can't do it by myself. I literally cannot. I have failed or have crawled in a very slow pace because I've tried to do it by myself. And it's ridiculous because no one can really do by themselves. And now that my husband's back, I'm like, there's life in me. It's almost like I was dehydrated and then like my whole body like went back to normalcy. I'm in the kitchen every day. I'm happy. I'm cooking. I'm singing. I got to pepper my stuff. I'm getting my work done. I'm waking up an extra hour early to get whatever things I need to get done for work. There's a pep in my step. And I'm like, this is it. Not that I want to rely on him alone, but it's just reminding me that like, you need people. And so I'm going to pray on that and say, thank you, God, in advance for giving me the chosen family and the kind of people you know that I need. And just thanking him in advance for that and knowing that he will place that in your life and in my life, period.
What you said is powerful because community gives us our why. There's no such thing as a self-made person. Why? Because at the end of the day, if you are isolated and it's only you can only fill you with only so much. What is a house if there's no one to share it with? What is a car when there's nobody to ride with? What is all clothes and you have nowhere to go in them? And I think all the things is that community gives us meaning. That's why when the Lord is speaking about Adam, it says it's not good for man to be alone. But I think there's a difference between, for me, like a lot of I want to live alone, but I realize I want privacy, not loneliness and exclusion. And I think when you can find the fine line is like, sometimes I just want my own space for my silence, but I still want to be in a part of a community.
Oh, for sure.
For privacy, you know, I have to take time for myself. I want to be alone sometimes. Sometimes I just don't want to hear anything. And that's okay to take that time so that you can rejuvenate, so that you can clear your thoughts, so you can let things out, and then go back into amongst people who we all need. We were not meant to be alone. And I think when we think about the Bible and the sheep, notice he says that he leaves the 99 for the one. He's leaving the one, he's bringing it back to the 99. So we aren't a part of a community that we're meant to stay in a community. And what Satan wants to do is isolate us. He's the wolf. If you've ever seen a documentary of lions, and what they do is that they try to separate one from the pack, and they'll never attack a full pack because they can't over with them. And so I think it's dangerous when we have a human tendency, we're going to become depressed, right? I think of depression, if you're left on an island, you're going to, because we need this. But it's in the best settings that are going to pour into us, because there are toxic settings where individuals want to take, and realizing that if we're going to live in any ecosystem, there must be a give and take. If you're going to live in the jungle, right, something has to die to replenish this has to, it's a part of the whole ecosystem. It's just, you do one thing, next thing keeps going out. And if we don't know how to do that with people, saying that, oh, I see your need, let me meet it. But if you see someone who has given something freely to you, there's two things that end up happening. There's people, oh, I can't take anything from you. And so that's a part of ego, and it's toxic because you want to be the person who gives. So it's a part of pride because you think you're all that. But then you can't always be the person who wants to give. You got to say, hey, I'm going to be willing to receive what the other person has. And I'm also willing to give on the other person. So that, notice now, our cups remain full at the same time.
I like that you said that, because I'd never thought about it that way, because I have this issue where people want to give to me, but I feel like uncomfortable. And it is a pride thing. I know it's a pride thing. So let's just say I have an issue and people can clearly see I have an issue that I want filled, and they're like, hey, I'll do this for you, I'll do that for you. And I'm like, whoa, that's a bit much. I feel uncomfortable accepting all of that. And so I never thought about it as, man, they're willing to give. Why am I not accepting that? What is where's that blockage happening? And so that's definitely something to think about.
And it's not cookie cutter, because sometimes,
for sure.
Because some things are given, right, where they have an expense to it, and sometimes unspoken. So I think we have to be careful. Like everything I said is not just a very linear.
The people giving to me are people that I can trust. I make sure that there's no strings attached. I always have that conversation, like, they're not some random people. They're people I've like really built, most of these are my parents. My parents are like here, and I'm like, whoa, okay, is this a loan? What we doing here? So
I see that too, because I realize there's sometimes where people will give you something and it's like, okay, they're looking sometime down the road that they'll take something back. but it's being in the spaces where people give like Christ gave. Is that I'm not expecting you to do anything back. I am solely giving to you out of the kindness and love of the heart, that what Christ has put on me to give or to do for you, because I see that I'm not looking for anything back, and realizing that whatever I give you, right, I'm putting a deposit with the Father in heaven. He's going to take care of. But it's seeing people's needs and not having ulterior motives of giving and want. And that's, like I said, that's some discernment and prayer to understand is who's truly you, to say, listen, is this person giving because they see that I'm in need, or are they giving to take advantage of me? Right. That takes clear discernment. So again, not
yeah. I'm very careful about who I connect with. And one of our other previous podcasts, we talked about like but like maybe attracting quality relationships or holding on to those quality people. And as we get older, we realize like, you have your high school, you have your college, and the people that really stick in your life. Do you have like quality relationships, or at least like 2 or 3 people that can hold you accountable?
Yes, my best friends from undergrad.
I like seeing them. They're cool guys.
Best friend. Inde. We were roommates at Georgia Cumberland Academy, a boarding school in high school. We roommated in college. And so one of the closest people to my friend Bakari, we worked at the pool together. He allowed me to get a job at UAH. He's one of my best friends. I've told him practically my whole entire life. Same Inde. Gio, I'm the same way. He's my workout buddy. He's the guy on the grind, but his intensity to just improve and what he says he's going to do, he's going to show up for. And then I have David, I have my friend Sean, right? And so these are like my tight knit group where like Sean, I can talk to about anything. We not talk all the time, but I can call him and say I'm going through it. And he has such high intelligence. I have David, who just got married, and we met in the undergrad, but the way in which this guy played basketball, we talked, and like we communicate, really good set of friends. And so I know that these guys, they're there for me, that I can talk to them about different situations, and they'll continue to show up. And so, I realize they're all advancing forward, and so I realize if you're going to be running with the best, you got to be putting in some work. And so these are my iron that are who are sharpening, who are giving me critiques, who are there just, holding me to think outside of myself. And so those are like, I think, my core advisors to a point.
For sure.
Like my parents that I also see are very important in guiding. And then who's on top of that. There's safety in the multitude of counsel. You got to learn to make your own decisions, but there's a way that seems right unto Cordell, but in the end, there's death.
I love it. Man, I know that we won't always get to talk all the time, but I really do appreciate that we get to like have this conversation. I appreciate that we got to meet as adults. We met when we were kids, and that's like a little foggy process. But seeing you again was like, oh, my brother, an extension of my brother. And so I just want you to know that like wherever I move to, and you passing through, our home is your home. Because that's what our parents have done for us. They have had, Auntie Anna is just too generous. She can be a tough cookie, but she's also like very loving, very nurturing. And I just want to be kind of like extension of that. Our grandmother was that way too. But like really into ministry, very nurturing, very kind, has a great sense of humor, hospitable, generous. She was a lot of things. Auntie Anna, it's the same way. And so I hope to have just a morsel of those characteristics with my family. And so
yeah, and same. And I think on the point, Auntie Annette has one of the highest highest levels of emotional intelligence that I've seen of any human being. The ability to see situations, analyze them, and see all the dynamics and meet everybody's emotional needs to be loved within a community. One of the most intelligent people I know, so definitely the way in which she's allowed me to see the world and open up her home to me is the same way that I try to do for you guys. Wherever the Father places me, I am but an extension of my environment, and however I can give back and support, right? So don't have much, but whatever I have to give.
Dude, you're gonna be building. It's gonna be fine. You're gonna look back and be like, you're gonna watch this podcast like, man, I was so humble. Look at me now. So no, you're gonna.
I am gotta stay close to the ground, man. Anybody who thinks they've started to fly, David, Solomon, get knocked off a pedestal. I'm but what David says, a flea on the wall, right?
I just
here
say
it
thank God I'm still here.
That's it. Yes, it's only by the goodness of God that we move, and so I'm just very cautious about that. Just it's only His goodness, only His
For
goodness.
sure. Anything you want to end that you haven't shared in this podcast that you want to share to the cousins, to the crew?
Contact information below. Whoever wants to connect, talk some more.
Yeah.
I'm more than willing to do so. So I can send them my email, and they can email me. Yeah.
Man, you don't use IG anymore. I don't. Is it just like a storefront, but no one's inside?
Actually, so my Instagram has a love-hate relationship with me because, part times I'm like, man, I'm on it. Then part of me just wants to delete it because I'm not into the scrolling thing, but then it's like, I got into these little reels, and those reels are like a deep rabbit hole. And so unless I'm, in my place to post content, I like just delete it for a little couple weeks and just get rid of it. And then trying to get my points where I'm posting content, because either you're a receiver or you're a giver, right? Some things you can eat, but it's a powerful app.
It is. It could be a little time consuming and draining, emotionally draining, because I take in all that information. We soak in people's vibes and all that stuff like that. So it can be a lot. So the best way to reach you is email, old school email.
I'm old school. We can do IG. Anton Dormer, just at Anton Dormer. You might see my dad and also me, but you can differentiate between the older and younger. So just Anton Dormer, it should pop up, and follow, and I do follow back. So no stress.
Cool. Well, I appreciate you. I love you so very much. And
love you. Thanks for having me.
For sure. Good chat.